Cool. Thank you for agreeing to meet with me.
Happy to do it.
Should only be 15 minutes. We'll just see how many questions we get through. But just start off, could you go a little bit through your background?
Sure. So I am a CPA. Got my college degree graduated in December of 1990, and worked for a CPA firm in Des Moines for a couple of years, and then moved back here to Waterloo and started with Hogan Hansen in 1993.
Yeah.
And have been here, or 1994. 1993. Anyway.
Just before Tears for Marine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's been in 1993. So I've been here for 30 some years. And I am the firm's managing partner.
Thank you. So majority of questions around kind of your managerial experience, style. And then this first one is, I'm going to kind of curtail it for you. What's advice you give to new managers at your firm? So somebody that was just promoted from an individual contributor to a manager.
So I guess it would kind of depend on what their role as a manager is, whether they're supervising people or more maybe supervising, like in our business, engagements, whether it's a tax engagement or an audit engagement. But I think, the key things about being a good manager are, listening, giving clear instruction to people. Don't assume somebody knows what you mean, explain it to them, and then, ask them maybe to explain, if it appears that they're not following you, you can usually look in somebody's eyes and see that they're maybe not getting it. Yeah. And so you say to them, explain back to me what you think we need to accomplish or how we're going to get there. I'm always big with, trying to, begin with the end in mind. A lot of the 7 habits types of things of, before you try and start to do something, particularly like in an audit engagement, you need to know what the end result's going to be. So we need to be thinking about what are we trying to accomplish instead of just kind of jumping into the pool and hoping you find something. So I would say those things about, making sure that you're giving clear instruction to people. That sense of, whether they're getting it or not. And then a lot of times it's then, maybe using different strategies to maybe explain something a different way, So if you aren't getting it the way I'm telling you, try and come up with a different way to explain it.
You mentioned there's auditing, and I forget the other
tax,
and you would give different advice to managers. What are some of the differences between the two?
So I think like with an audit, the audit's much more broad because you're doing specific procedures to test maybe a transaction or an account balance. And so not everything you do in an audit is the same thing. It's not like you do the same three things for, let's say, auditing cash or auditing receivables. So you have to know that those things are going to be different, and there's different ways you go about it, and trying to understand what are we doing? What are we trying to accomplish? Not go do A, B, and C.
X, Y, over and over and over again. Like there's less reps, and it's just more. You don't know what you're going to.
Yes,
that's cool. Okay.
And to just go and do A, B, C every time, but if you don't know what you're trying to accomplish, you're going to do A, B, and C. You're going to get done, and you're not going to know. Did we accomplish anything? Because you don't know what you're trying to accomplish. So that's where an audit's different. A tax engagement's a lot more straightforward, where you are doing specific things recurring on a tax return, so it's going to be the same thing for every corporate tax return for the most part. They're all going to be very similar.
I just kind of it's probably harder because you're talking about like teaching kind of essentially.
Yes,
and it's a lot harder to do that if it's not repetitive.
Yep, exactly.
So you have a very different
exactly, because with auditing you really have to learn to be analytical thinking. So that is a key part of like what management too is helping people develop those skills to be thinkers and think analytically and
rather than just following instructions.
Exactly. Because then you get to the end, you don't know if you accomplished what you were supposed to accomplish because you don't even know what the end was supposed to be. Right?
Yeah. This is one of the next ones. I feel like it gets really interviewy, so curtail it a little bit for more for management, but it's like, tell me about a project that failed and what you did and like how you analyzed it. But I guess think of it more, you had a subordinate who they didn't meet expectations on a certain project. How did you kind of coach them through it?
I would say, usually you're trying to go back and, evaluate why why it didn't work out,
Hmm.
and and being critical of yourself, like, hey, did I,
Oh yeah, was it me? Was it them?
did I not give them good guidance, or did
Clarity.
I not set realistic expectations, or maybe did I not give them the right, deadlines or milestones to be hitting, and so now we missed a deadline and the client's upset or something like that, so
Yeah.
first of all, did I screw something up from the get-go? But then it's also about, well, how did you monitor those people to make sure that
Oh,
they were,
throughout check-ins.
check-ins to make sure that they were doing, getting accomplishing their work.
Yeah.
Because if you just, say, I need you to do this, and then 4 hours later you come back, how you coming? And they're like, oh yeah, I got a scum question, and I'm stuck. And you're like, what have you been doing for 4 hours? So, and that'll happen a lot with younger staff on audits, where you get going and they
kind of
may get stuck,
and they might not tell you.
Right. And so if you're not saying to them, hey, how you doing?
Yeah.
Let me see where you're at.
Interesting.
You should be this far by now.
Yeah.
So,
I didn't even think about that they're nervous to tell you they don't, even though it's like fully expected.
right.
They
Right.
wouldn't know.
They'd be afraid to ask a question,
Yeah.
because they're afraid that, they're like,
Oh no.
maybe I
think
should
I'm
know
dumb.
this,
Yeah.
and now I'm look like I'm dumb. And
Yeah.
so we also push that a lot too. It's like, well, there are no dumb questions, because even us who've been doing this for years,
Yeah.
we don't have all the answers. And so
Yeah. Yeah.
you've got to be able to rely on other people to help you.
I like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Especially when you're like so new
Mm.
to a job or in your career.
Yeah.
How do you coach your team to make the right call when they face a situation that isn't clearly covered in your company handbook? It's kind of, you can curtail to kind of what you were saying of like, you guys don't know the answers.
Mhm.
So how do you kind of coach them through it? Probably an audit would be the,
Yeah. Again, I think it's just really encouraging people to ask questions, and making them, understand that, those of us who've been doing this for a long time, or those of us in management positions, we don't have all the answers. We don't know.
Mhm.
And we're having to ask each other sometimes.
Yeah.
Or,
group problem
even for
solving.
them to see where you're doing something and maybe you're struggling, so you may be working on a section of something and they're working on a section of something, and you share with them,
Yeah.
hey, this is, man, I don't know where I'm going with this, that I'm really stuck. It's just, man, this is driving me crazy, so that they know it happens to you also,
Yeah.
and it's okay.
I think I've fallen into that trap where people come to me and they want me to know all the answers, and I have to teach them that I don't either.
Yeah.
But here's how I think through the problems, or
Right.
who can you talk to next, who might know.
Yeah.
That's a good one.
Yeah, to help them develop some strategies on how to, solve the problem. Okay, well, how are we going to tackle this, or like putting it back on them of like, well, where do you think we should
Yes.
start?
Yep.
Where do you think we should
Yep.
start on this? What would make sense to you?
Yeah. Just so they start thinking.
Yep.
On their own.
Yep.
Yeah. Trust is. This is a new one. Trust is easy to lose and hard to gain. What is your personal strategy for building, I guess, social capital within your team on a daily basis?
I think it's got to be, you've got to have integrity, and
Mhm.
when your word is gold, those kinds of things, that when you tell somebody something, they know that they can rely on that's the truth, and or if
Yeah.
you need to, say you're going to help somebody, or you need to defend somebody, or maybe there's something going on, that you've got their back.
Yeah.
You need to be genuine, and support them.
I kind of like that question for you too, since you're a managing partner. So it's probably been a while since because you've already built up the social capital to get there.
Right.
So that's kind of interesting. Just have you reflect.
But it still is real and ongoing because of, you got your relationship with your partners. I've got 7 partners. So,
Yep. And it's always changing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And you got 7 different 8 different personalities for the most part. So that makes it, sometimes challenging to negotiate your way through, navigate your way through that.
New partners or a different moment, or just kind of growing and changing with the business.
Yeah, and just how people are motivated by different things, then I think that's and you've probably seen it too as a manager, you also kind of have to understand the people and what is it that motivates them,
Mhm.
I remember in a class, it was a marketing class in college, but I'll never forget this, but the guy talked about 3 things that motivate all people: is ego, greed, and fear.
Yeah.
And I don't know why I remembered that, but as I've gone through my career, I've seen that, where you see people and you're like, oh, that's what really drives that person.
That's interesting. I have a similar one from this is a management class,
Okay.
but it's from an undergrad one, which was willing or not willing, and able and not willing, or able and unable.
Okay.
And it's a quadrant of where you
quadrant,
figure
yeah.
out which one they're in and if you can move them. But if they're like unable and willing, that's great. But if
Yeah.
they're unable and unwilling,
You gotta
yeah,
stop the bottom off.
it's time for them to go. But kind of some others, I've just always held on.
Yeah, that's good. I like that.
Yeah. How do you adjust the work environment or your commute? You kind of touched on that one. How do you handle a team member who's constantly pushing back on the how this is how this will be good, this is how we've always done it? How do you see that as a friction or benefit? I don't know if I like to call it, to disruption. So I guess somebody said this is how we've always done it this way. They're not willing to adapt.
Yeah, it's that has, when those situations come up, you do try as a manager try and take the approach of maybe I need to listen to them and hear what their ideas are. And, if you've got a different way of doing something, let's talk about it. Let's hear it. Usually when it's like process procedure type thing, those are good to listen to. But
yeah,
it's also sometimes it's just having that frank discussion with somebody like, well, you may not like the fact that this is how we do things.
Yeah.
But there's a reason. We're not doing it just because.
Explain
we're doing
why.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. This is why we do it. This is why we think it's the best way to do it. And we make the decisions, and that's the way we're going to do it. And if you don't like it, tough.
I like that too, because kind of go back to your audit versus tax example. It depends heavily which one it is. Because I think there's more room for different processes probably on the audit side, where tax, it's like, this has worked in this.
Yeah. And sometimes it just gets to the point where people, they don't want to adapt, and again, a lot of that goes back to personalities. And we've just recently terminated a couple people because
they're unwilling.
They just were unwilling to ever adapt to the way we do things, and just kind of always want to do it their way. And eventually you're like, this isn't working. So you're done.
Cool. I think we got time for one more. I'll just sign between the last two. So let's do the bottom one. So you've a talented person and you've lost, so you have a talented person who lost their confidence on a specific task. How do you kind of coach them back into be confident again? Could be a young person too.
Yeah,
because it's more easy to get deflated.
I think, that happens. Where people maybe they go over budget on a job, or they just they feel like they've made mistakes and like, oh, that's so dumb. And I think you just have to be understanding and sympathetic to them, and tell them, hey, it's not the end of the world. Again, we all make mistakes, but own the mistake. And let's get it fixed, and let's learn from this. The main thing is, we don't care if people make mistakes, but learn from it.
Yeah.
But when you make the mistake, and then the next job you make the same mistake, and then the next job you make the same mistake, and you're like, you're not learning.
Yeah.
You're not listening. You're not learning, and that's not good.
Yeah. Yeah. And you either need to, or
you either need to, or we're going to have to stop the bus and watch out.
That's the next way to say it. Cool. Well, thank you so much again.
Yeah, that was quick.
Walking me through this, and
right.
like I said, painless.
Yeah,
15 minutes.
All right.
But, thank you.
Was 15 minutes.
Yeah, it should have been like right around.